So I was having a conversation with my healer the other day, and I don't really know how we got on the topic of this. Also, if you're watching the video, excuse my like undone pants, but we're at that phase. And I'm literally trying on different jeans because I'm trying to figure out that whole look that people nail. And I'm like, how do you nail this? Where basically you buy jeans that are like way too big, but they fit down underneath the bump. And they just like, it's like that kind of like baggy look. Cause I don't want to buy, I don't have anything wrong with maternity jeans necessarily, but like I can't find like an actual sexy pair. There's so many like skinny jeans at a maternity. And I'm like, that's not the look we're going for. Anyway, that was not what I came on to tell you guys. So I was having this conversation with my healer the other day, and I don't know how we got on the topic of it, but she was like, actually, Monica, the other day I had a client that said, oh, I saw that you were at Monica's wedding, blah, blah, blah. She was like, yeah. And the client says, is her life actually real, or is it all just like fake and it's not actually real? And my healer was kind of like, obviously like, what? Yes, her life, of course, is real. And she was like, I actually went on a bit of a rant, and I probably shouldn't have. But we've known each other I started working with her when I was in maybe grade 11 or grade 12, so like 17 or 18. I think I was 18. I can't remember. Anyway, it's been a very, very long time. She's seen me go through it all. And so it got me onto this topic that I want to talk to you guys about today. And I also share this a little bit inside of my Her Year Masterclass as well. So if you haven't watched that, then I definitely recommend going and watching that. But here it kind of is. I'm talking to you guys about it in a similar, but of course different, because, you know, every time I say it, it's obviously going to be a little bit different because it's not scripted way. So if you've already heard it, this would be a nice reminder. And of course, I'm going to go on some tangents. But if you haven't watched the masterclass, then I would still recommend going and watching the masterclass. So it got me into this conversation, and she actually reminded me of a lot of things that I've gone through. And I am just not somebody that really hangs on to the past in this kind of way of like, it's my identity. And I share this, by the way, firstly, from a place of like full compassion for those of you that have had really hard past. Obviously, I work with so many people that have gone through horrendous traumas, in my mind, way worse than anything that I've ever been through, in terms of whether it's like, you know, physical abuse, or whether it's emotional abuse, or whether it's sexual abuse. I've really dealt with so much, like more than, you know, I get cases and I'm just like, this just is so fucked up. This is happening in the world. And a lot of you, and I'm glad that a lot of you would not even be able to come to terms with some of the cases that I've worked with, because it really is just so kind of like, how do people actually behave like this? But anyway, my point is that I've seen a lot, I've dealt with a lot. And in doing all of that, something that I've really identified is that the people that go on to live this amazing life, and not just like this amazing life in terms of what it looks like from the outside, but in terms of how they feel in their life, like they feel truly satisfied and happy. The common denominator is they don't hold on to the past, in terms of they don't identify as a victim or like a survivor or anything like that. They've been able to heal their trauma. They hold a lot of compassion for the fact that they actually had to go through that. But because they were able to heal from that, then they were actually able to build this incredible life that, of course, other people can look at and potentially project and go, that's not actually real. And so my first call out is for any of you that, and fair enough, because a lot of people fake what they share online or whatever it is. But for any of you that will look at my life, whether it's on an Instagram story or an email or whatever, and go, oh, that's just all fake, it's just all a highlight reel. It's honestly not. Like, yeah, of course, Instagram is a highlight reel, and I'm not going to tell you every single moment that I'm having a down day, because that does not serve you at all. It also doesn't serve me. Like, if I was to get on Instagram stories or write an email every time I had a hard moment or I was in a mood, it doesn't serve me or you. And the reason why is because then I'm staying in, and you're then getting into a negative energy. You're getting into victimhood, you're getting into this spiral, and you're attaching to negativity versus understanding that as humans, we all go through negative emotions. We all have bad days. We all have days where we're just in a fucking mood. And like, no matter what somebody says to us, it's going to piss us off. Like, I was kind of in one of those this weekend. We all have those moments, and that just makes us human. And when we dwell in them or live in them, then they become a part of us. And so when it comes to the past, my healer was reminding me of all the things that I've been through, and I'd honestly like really not forgotten. I just don't think about it. And even as I was writing this list that I'm sending out in an email soon, and I mentioned some of the things in her 7 Pillars to Becoming Her in 2025 masterclass. I mentioned some of the things in there, but as I was writing all of these things, I was like, oh my God, I kind of forgot this even happened. And you know how like iPhotos will bring up the memories of the past? I kind of like when that happens because it will remind me of like hard days or hard moments or just even, moments in my life where I'm like, oh my God, I completely just like not forgot, but just hadn't thought about that in a really long time. And this is important because I'm seeing a lot of people these days that are getting super addicted to labels. They're getting super addicted to victimhood. Hold on, I need a sip of water. That wasn't a sip. That was like half my like massive mason jar of water. My God, I feel constantly dehydrated pregnant, and I'm like constantly trying to catch my breath because I don't know, it's just like I can't breathe. And not I can't breathe, but there's all like that blood pumping through you and whatever. So you're just like, I walk up the stairs and it feels like I've run a marathon. Anyway, people are getting really addicted to attaching themselves to labels and victimhood and the past. And the reason why is that they're getting some kind of significance from their past. Often, just one of those elements of significance could be that it gives them an excuse as to why they don't have what they want. So for any of you listening, if you're attaching yourself to any kind of excuses, and the excuse could simply be, well, I don't have time for that, and that's why I can't get X, Y, and Z. Or, well, I'd be able to make more money, but I can't because I'm a mum. And so like all my time is spent being a mum. Like, yeah, there's components of that where it's a reality. Like, yes, a lot of your time is spent being a mum. But when you think about it, that is telling yourself that keeps you in that reality. When we tell ourselves that, our reticular activating system becomes primed to just show us that reality. And truly, when you think about it, like we are harming ourselves. It's a form of self-harm, staying in victimhood, because we literally are blocking ourselves from a higher vibrational frequency and from just like having the life that we want and becoming her, if you will. And so another really common way people will do it is if you have been a quote unquote survivor of abuse. Now, yes, of course you've been a survivor of abuse or a victim of abuse, but when you think about it, and if you want to attach to these labels, like absolutely be my guest, but I know 99% of you listening, you're listening because you want to be a better version of yourself, because you want to have the life truly of your dreams. And so part of that is actually detaching from like any kind of victimhood, survivor energy, whatever, because why that is not because you're gaslighting the fact that you did survive potentially really bad abuse or whatever it is that you survived, right? It's not to say that didn't happen. You are not gaslighting yourself. You are very much validating. Part of this whole healing journey is validating every single thing that you went through, every single hard moment, every trauma, everything you dealt with, right? So we are validating all of that. We are just not becoming it. We are just not making our whole identity our past. We're not making our identity our trauma and the hardship we went through. That is the problem, right? We are making our identity the person that we are, and you are not your trauma, you are not your abuse, you are not, your victimhood or what you survived. So we're making ourselves instead, like we want to identify as the current version of ourselves and the future version of ourselves, not the past version of ourselves. And so all of this was coming through with this whole idea of like, is my life real or not? When this person asked this question to my healer. Because to me, I was like, what? Like, of course my life is real. But as you were talking, she reminded me, and so I'm here to remind you guys, she reminded me of the fact that for a lot of us, when we are staying in victimhood, when we are staying in like, this energy of I can't get what I want, when we are literally living in the past, we do not believe it's possible to have this incredible life. So when we see somebody else having it, we're like, nah, it's fake. And we do that. It's this whole energy of like tearing others down. And girls really love to do it. Why we do it, it's like this queen bee syndrome, right? Especially when it comes to like us girls. Woo, yay. We are such bitches to each other. Anyway, it's this queen bee syndrome. We tear each other down. And it's from this place of jealousy, but not in this bad way. Like jealousy can get a really bad rap. So quick little note on jealousy. If you're jealous of somebody, you're like, oh, I want what she has. The fact that you want what she has tells you that you can get what she has, right? If you want what she has, there is a desire for it. If there is a will, there is a way. I've used this example so many times. I don't want to be a doctor. So when I look at doctors, there's no jealousy, there's no desire, there's no like, oh, I want what they have. Because there's no part in my soul's journey that is meant to be like a medical doctor, like in a hospital, right? Like putting needles in people, can't do it. So if you are looking at somebody else and you're like, I want what they have, the reason why you want it is because it is basically written in the stars for you. It's about whether you're going to actually go after it and get it. Women will see other women and they want what they have, right? So they're looking at me, for example, and they're thinking, oh, her life isn't real, or is her life really real? Now, it's not that you're actually trying to be like a malicious person or anything like that, or like consciously tear me down, quote unquote. You're doing it from this place of essentially not feeling worthy or believing that you're capable of getting that. And so instead of actually changing that narrative and being like, no, I am capable of getting this, because if she can have it, I can have it, which is true, 100% true. Instead of doing that, the easier route that requires less resources, because frankly, it's just less, you don't have to put out as much energy basically. What's less resourceful to do is instead pull me down to your level, or pull whoever down to your level, so you feel better about yourself. So if you then start telling yourself, nah, this person's fake, nah, this person doesn't actually have what they have. And by the way, I want to say this, there is so much fakeness on social media. Like, so much of it. Like I really feel like you can actually just see right through it at this point. It's actually kind of sad, right? But to me, it's like so obvious that it's fake. And I know that when somebody, when this woman, for example, or if any of you are thinking, oh, is her life actually real? You're not actually thinking that it's fake. It's like it feels too good to be true, essentially, because it is. I know for plenty of you, like it actually is so clear that it's so true, that it's actually how I live, because it's so authentic. Like I couldn't fake this shit if I tried. Put it this way, if I was showing you one Instagram story a day or 3 Instagram stories a day, shit would be easily faked. It's very obvious when it's curated. I'm only showing you one part of my day, but because I'm showing so much of my day, most of you, if not all of you, have pretty much been able to figure out this is actually how she lives, because it's consistent. And I'm showing you, like my whole entire day versus just like these perfect pictures that I'm posting on my Instagram stories. Anyway, my point is that when we're ripping this other person down, it's making us then feel like, oh, okay, I'm actually not as much of a failure as I'm thinking that I am. Versus being like, no, I'm going to rise. When we instead are like, no, I'm going to rise, that requires more resources. And we as humans are resourceful. We want to preserve resources. And so what is going to preserve resources is doing the thing that requires less resources, aka ripping somebody else down to make us feel better about ourselves. Also, a component of this could be trauma. It could be the fact that like you don't feel safe to have a certain kind of life, or to go after what you want, or to leave your relationship, for example. And so because you don't feel, like you don't feel safe, you don't feel motivated, you don't feel excited about the possibility of you going after what you want, it then is like, okay, well, I can't do that. So what am I going to do to make myself feel better about myself? I'm going to pull that person down in my mind. So coming back full circle, coming back to, is my life actually real, or is it all fake? There's plenty of you that know what I've been through. You have seen it on Instagram. You've listened to my podcast forever and whatnot. So you've seen how I've shown up for myself to get to the point where I am now in my life. But I realize there's also plenty of you that haven't seen that. You either haven't listened to some of the podcast episodes, which is fine, or you haven't followed me for that long on Instagram, or whatever it is. And so you don't fully know my story. And because I'm not constantly like sharing my story and what happened in the past and whatnot to kind of get me to this place, I thought it could be helpful to actually go through. I'm going to quickly skim through, because I go through it in the masterclass I mentioned, but I thought it could be helpful to skim through some of the things that I've been through where upon reflection, I'm like, this actually literally made me the woman that I am today. It truly made me the woman that I am today. I now, like, from the point of doing the majority of the healing work to now, I've gone through like a lot less in that period of time compared to before. And I feel like I've gone through less because I now live so in alignment. Whereas before it was just like thing after thing after thing. I always felt like, when's the next shoe gonna drop in terms of a bad thing happening? I was always hurting myself. I was always sick. There was always something going on, like in a bad way. And then when I got into my feminine, a lot of things changed, and now it's like less bad things have happened in my life, and bad obviously subjective and based on perception, but less bad things have happened in my life. And I truly feel like it's actually because I'm living a life that's in alignment versus living a life that I don't want. But all of these hard moments, they were so hard during them, but now I'm like, yeah, they happened, like it sucked during it, but like shit happens. And that's the energy that I want all of you to be able to be in, no matter what your trauma is. Like that is my intention with every single client, where it's not about forgetting that your trauma happened. Like it's actually more about being like, yeah, it happened, but I'm no longer defined by it. And that is that, like when you come to that place of, yeah, I'm no longer defined by it, that is the place of full mind, body, and soul freedom. And before I start to list these things out, I will say this as well. Becoming her is not about like, the concept of quote unquote her that I talk about, that dream version of yourself, right? Whatever that looks like for you, she can change over time. What is her, like what your version of her tomorrow is or today is, can be a different version in a week's time. We're multifaceted. We're growing human beings. We're women. We are not the exact same person in every moment of every day. But basically becoming that highest version of yourself, it is not about just waking up on the right side of bed. It is not about just like, oh, one day I just figured out what it is that I wanted to do, and that was it. From then on, I just knew what was like meant to be. That's not what happened for me, and that's not what is required. Like, don't expect. I know a lot of people are expecting this. They're expecting one day to just wake up and figure out what they're meant to do with their life. It's not going to happen. In fact, it's actually about this relentless work on yourself, showing up consistently every single day for your dream life. It means investing in yourself, doing the hard thing, not just running to safety all the time, but actually staying in the unknown and really trusting in the bigger picture. And even in terms of just not running to safety, but instead staying in the unknown, a prime example of this was I have this very distinct memory of during the COVID lockdowns. I was living in London at the time, which was London was one of the worst lockdowns in the world. Love that. Anyway, and it was really, really, really hard. And the only thing that got me through, was Jelly. Once I got him, he was part of the reason why I got him was because I was struggling with my just like mental state so badly. But what was really weighing on me mentally too was I just constantly thought, like, if I am struggling this much, and I have all the tools and I don't think negative thoughts about myself, like, so like when I'm saying struggling, it wasn't like I was thinking negative things about myself or anything. It was like I was struggling because my human, like animalistic part of me needed connection. I needed my family. I needed to know when this bullshit was going to end. I felt like I was in a prison sentence. I felt like I was literally locked up in jail because there was no end date. Right? That end date kept getting pushed. Like you felt so out of control. So your nervous system felt so unsafe because you could not just like, and I mean when I say out of control, I don't mean like, oh, just surrender to that. No, this is like the out of control where of course we all are familiar with this feeling because we all went through it. Where of course then that fight or flight or freeze is kicking in. I didn't know when I was going to see my family next. I mean, it got to the point where I made it a rule where we were not allowed to say I miss you on phone calls when I would phone my family or my friends, because it would just ruin my day. It would make me so upset. I'd be bawling my eyes out. I remember the exact conversation. I was sitting at my kitchen table in my London townhouse. I will say one thing that actually kept me really sane was I ended up getting like a 3-bedroom townhouse in Battersea in London. I had this little courtyard out the back, which got lots of sun. And luckily, the majority of the lockdown was happening during summer. And so there was a lot more light outside and whatnot. And it did snow that year when I was there at Christmas time in winter. So that made me really happy. But it was this morning, well, morning in London time, and I was on the phone to my family in Australia, and I was eating my omelette with spinach and tomato. I was sitting on the side of the kitchen bench, the kitchen table where I was looking at the kitchen, and I remember saying, like, this is a rule we have to do because I can't keep living like this. And I just kept thinking to myself, God, if I'm struggling this much, how much is the average person struggling? And all that got me through, honestly, was my work. And I am just like eternally grateful. But I also learned so much just even about the trauma of isolation during that time. So anyway, my point is that there was one time when I was sitting on the sofa, it was a weekend, and I was like a hot fucking mess. Like I was really, really, really down, really struggling. And I looked up flights home to Australia. I actually considered doing the whole like $10,000 ticket. You like the flights, there was no flights for like a month, I think, at that point. You had to do the 2 weeks quarantine once you got into Australia. Like it was just a whole fucking joke. And like in the hotel room, just like, okay, great. So you're that isolated and now you're shoved in a 500 square foot or however tiny they are hotel room. Like this is going to end really well. And I remember looking at the flights, and I remember this feeling of like, that is running to safety. And one of the things that I really believe helped me get my business off the ground and like just going so young, because when I would have been like, I think I was like 21, 22. I think it was might have been 21 or 22 when my business started really taking off. And I know in my core, and I will never forget this, one of the reasons was, so I was at home in Melbourne. This is back in like 2017. Yes, 2017. And I had decided I have to move out of home. So I was then like 19 at that time. And I remember I was, wanting to start my business and blah, 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 and things were happening. And I remember thinking to myself, and then I acted on it. I had this epiphany. By staying at home, I constantly have this safety net. And this safety net is stopping me from using or from getting the required fire up my ass to make my life what I want it to be. And if I keep staying in this safety, I'm never going to get what I want. And it was this realization of like, part of becoming the version of yourself that you want to be, part of having the life that you want to have is not running to safety, but staying in the unknown. Friends, I am so excited to share with you that I have another one of my juicy, like wet knickers, panty dropping masterclasses. You guys, if you haven't been to one of my masterclasses before, you can actually head to the masterclass vault and you can watch one of the previous ones. The title of it is Becoming Her in 2025. And we're going to be going into the 7 pillars that are essential for you to become her in 2025 and to create the life of your dreams. So what we are going to be covering in the masterclass is what it means to actually quote unquote become her, how feminine leadership is paramount for easy manifestation, the 7 pillars, like I said before. We're going to be doing a little life audit so that you can figure out where you're holding yourself back and not take that. I'm going to break down what embodied manifestation is and how it will drastically change the way that you magnetize your dream life. We're going to have a live Q&A, and there's going to be so much more. And it is all happening very shortly. So if you don't have your name down on the list, you absolutely need to, so you do not miss out. This will be a limited time masterclass. And I am fucking jazzed about it because shit's just getting better and fucking better. So anyway, let's jump back into the episode. I will see you guys in this masterclass. So when I was sitting then years later, when I was sitting in London and like looking at these flights, I didn't do it. And I obviously, or maybe not obviously, for those of you who don't know, I didn't fly back to Australia. And the reason why was because I knew in my gut. And let me tell you, like, we're like, at this point, just to paint the picture, I have also realized, oh, okay, I now fully understand why people commit suicide. Like, we were struggling internally. And it wasn't that I was like suicidal. It was that I had realized that is freedom. That is freedom for a lot of people, because like I was saying, inside of me, I felt like I was trapped in a prison sentence. It was horrible. So, and I know a lot of us were, so maybe some of you can relate to that feeling of the lockdown. So my point is, I was like, I knew deep in my soul, if I go back home, I will regret it. If I go back, it's not even about like going back to the house like my parents live in. It was, if I go to Australia, I am going to regret it because I am running to safety. And yes, safety feels so fucking good. Yes, sometimes we need safety, but if you want to live a life where people go, surely her life's not real. Like, that's how good it is. If you want to live that life, then you need to start doing the thing that is the opposite of safety. Because otherwise, what you're doing is you are just keeping yourself trapped, or maybe not trapped, whatever word you want to use, in your comfort zone all the time. You're just staying in what's familiar. And if you want next level result, if you want a different life, then you have to do something different. Otherwise, you're going to keep getting the same results. You're going to keep living the same year after year. 2025 is going to look the exact same as 2024 unless you actually shake shit up and you do something where you are then going towards the unknown. So I closed out the Virgin Australia tab, or I think it was actually Qantas only that was flying at that time. Yeah, it was. So I closed out the Qantas tab and I was like, no, I'm not flying home. I was like, I don't know when this is going to end, but I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it to myself because I know that will limit me and I know I will forever regret it. Let me give you guys that intuitive lesson that I just like fully felt in my body in that moment. And I want to pass it to you all because when I was reflecting and going through pictures of during that London time, God, it was hard. But you know what? It was also like, I'm getting like emotional thinking about this. I mean, I also cry at literally nothing right now. It was also like such an amazing year in the sense that even though I was struggling so much, I have never showed up for myself in such an intense way. Like my commitment to creating joy and happiness and creativity during one of the hardest years of my life. I mean, I had 0 friends in London. Like I was extremely isolated. You know, I was looking back at my photos, and for those of you that followed me during that time, I would do these like weekend trips that I would take you guys on my Instagram stories, and I would just, for us all to have fun, and I would find all these pictures of like, let's say for example Ibiza, and we would pretend that we're traveling to Ibiza on my Instagram stories, and I would make food, and like I would just spend the whole weekend pretending that I was in Ibiza and I'm stuck in London in my townhouse and with this tiny little backyard. And that's what I would do, and I would share it on my Instagram stories, and I would do so many Instagram lives. And I remember doing an Instagram post early on in the lockdown, and because I was doing these community circles with you guys where it was like $100 or something, and we would do these like circles together and just like be all together during obviously a really hard time. And I remember thinking, we are so socially isolated but so socially connected during that time. Like what sorry guys, the tears are ridiculous. I'm just thinking back to I know for so many of us, and I was not alone in this struggle, it has been a really hard time. I know that the flow-on effects for a lot of young people are really, really, really bad. Like really bad. And it really does concern me. I didn't buy that flight to Australia. I ended up having a beautiful Christmas with a friend in Zermatt. We went to Switzerland. And I got the most ridiculous penthouse. We went all out. It was an amazing trip. And had I not gone on that trip, I would not have then come back to New York, because on that trip, he was standing in the kitchen and I was sitting on the sofa. He was cooking or something. And he said to me, he said, you need to go back to the US. You need to go back to Colorado. And I was like, why? He said, there is something, and this is also, my God, I'm crying again. I'm about to cry about skiing, guys. About to cry about skiing. For those of you that are like, you're skiing pregnant? Oh my God, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, because like, this is why I actually left London, even when like you couldn't travel and it wasn't safe to travel and whatever, is he said to me, he was like, you are so lit up when you ski and in the snow. Like you need to ski. Like it's winter time. You need to go back to Colorado basically. And you need to like be able to go skiing for a while, because I'd obviously just had like the worst year ever. And so long story short, had he not said that to me, I maybe would not have actually considered it. And I remember saying to him, I said, I can't, like all the flights are not happening. Like it's not safe to travel, blah, blah, blah. Like you can't get into the US. And he just said to me, he said, Monica, it's you. I remember this so clearly. He said, I love just being able to do this podcast because I've like kind of forgot this happened. But as I'm talking, I'm like, oh my God, I remember this. And he was like, it's you. Like, I'm sure all of you listening are like, yeah, Monica, it's you. Like, and I was like, yeah, like, what the fuck? Like, it's me. Like, I manifest the impossible. And I was like, yeah, yes. And so I found the loophole, right, which was to fly through Mexico. And, I ended up leaving London and I flew to Mexico with Jelly, a little trooper. He was on the flight. And even on that flight, like I couldn't fly first class because dogs weren't allowed. So I had to fly economy. It was a very long flight, but it was worth it. And I manifested a middle seat, like empty. So Jelly literally sat in the middle seat the whole entire flight. It ended up being the guide on the other, like the seat next to Jelly. He was also going to Tulum as well. He was going to Mexico, and I literally saw him on the beach like 2 days later. Long story short, I think this is important to mention too, like just talk about when you're in alignment, the universe providing. I saw him on the beach 2 days later or something. I was going for a walk with Jelly and I saw him and he was like, do you want to get dinner tonight? And I was like, sure, this is all platonic, by the way, in case my husband's like, Monica, haven't mentioned this one to me. So yeah, we went out for dinner and then I forgot my wallet or something. So I was just like, we're out for dinner. And so I was like, I'm just going to go back to my hotel and get my wallet. So I walked back to my hotel, and some of you might remember this, some of you wouldn't. My house that I'd been staying in, I was living in like the house that was on the hotel property because I'd been living there. I was living in Tulum for like 3 months, so I just got the house, and so I could cook and everything. And it had been broken into, and my laptop was stolen, my wallet was stolen, everything was stolen. I had this intuitive nudge to put my passports. I have two, to put my passports in the safe because I'm like shit at doing that. Like before I left for dinner, I walked down the stairs and I had this feelings. I remember walking back up the stairs and just putting them in there. I just did it. Thank God I did that. Like, thank God. I made them pay for my laptop and everything because you don't fuck with me. And it just so happened that the security cameras went off at the exact same time. And so I'm like, okay, clearly you guys were in on this. My point is that guy that I was out for dinner with, he spoke like 7 languages because he was an ex-police officer and fire brigade and also something else, maybe like higher up than police officer as well. He spoke like 500 languages. So he was able to then, because like he came back once I like texted him and told him, he came back and he was able to then like speak to the security that was like security like on the property and figure all of that out. My point is in all of that is like, that is just one example. I'm not saying, oh, let's get our houses robbed. I'm saying like that guy that helped me that night when my house was robbed, he was sitting next to me on the plane. Like I had a seat between us on a full flight from Paris, get to fly to Paris first, from Paris to Cancun, and then you drive to Tulum for Jelly. I left London even when they were like, no, you can't leave, blah, 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 because I am relentless. And I want to pass on to you. I am relentless in going after what I want. Because the only limitation is you. You are the only limitation. The only limitation is what you tell yourself in your mind. Your heart is infinite. Your body is infinite. Like abundance is infinite. Possibilities are infinite. The only thing that feels finite are the thoughts in your head. And truly, like some of you have even already DM'd me this. Let me actually read you this one because I just saved this as a draft on my Instagram stories. For those of you that have already been joining her year, which is my new, so excited. Well, actually, it's a facelift of her, by my program her. But for those of you that are already joined her year, my 12-month mastermind-like experience, I'm just so fucking excited for these 12 months with you. But one of you messaged me saying, I paid for her year yesterday. Since then, I feel energetically up-leveled already for 2025. A great sense of peace came over me, and I handled a difficult interpersonal situation. I handled a difficult interpersonal situation with ease and to my favor. The man I am dating is rearranging his schedule for the holidays to spend time with me. I have goosebumps. Three people at work complimented on my appearance and the work performance today. The world is falling into sync. That is literally a day later that she sent me that after buying. And my point is like when you are in alignment with your life, when you are truly growing and expanding and up leveling yourself, even when it feels so fucking scary, that is when all of these magical pieces fall into place. That is when you feel like, wow, the universe has my back. Like this universe, this world that we live in is truly, truly magical. And that is when you will start to feel like I am magical. You are magical. Okay, so let me give you guys, I went on like a full tangent and didn't even go through my list, but let me give you guys one more example of just like I didn't just wake up one day and get this life. So Okay, let me start with this one actually. My business, for those of you that don't know, there's actually a whole, like, I did an updated About Me podcast episode. So don't go right back to the beginning. We'll link it below. It's like, I don't know. I think I did it towards the end of 2022 or 2023. Anyway, so my business, I didn't like know what I wanted to do, start it, and then have a bajillion clients in the door. My business started as a food blog. It actually started, I mean, really what it started was me posting pictures of these giant salad bowls. I'd make salads in these mixing bowls, like, so we're talking like huge. And I'd put them on Snapchat back in the day when I was using Snapchat. And my friends would be like, oh my God, I want to stop asking you for the recipe. Can you please make a blog? And so I started to make a food blog. One thing led to another. I got super into my food blogs. I was posting all these recipes. I was working at a cafe in Melbourne once I'd moved back home after my gap year, because on my gap year I became a ski instructor, and I lived in London for a few months and did a job that sucked my soul. So that was great. And then, but you know, we've all done those. And then I moved back to Melbourne, started this food blog, and then I was working at a cafe at the same time. I also started becoming a recipe developer for a spice company in Melbourne. Around this time, this is when I lost my period, even though I was on the pill. So I had no breakthrough bleed at all. So like none of the drug-induced bleeds from the pill. And so I went off the pill and didn't get my period altogether still. Like my period didn't come back, and started losing a lot of weight rapidly. I looked anorexic even though I was eating literally more than my brother and my dad combined. And so it took from like starting that food blog. So I started that food blog at the end of 2015. No, not until like middle of 2015. I started the food blog. And it took from 2015 to about the middle of 2017 to figure out, oh, I want to work with people in this deeper way. Like, I don't want to do the food thing anymore. I was still interested in it. I still obviously use like healthy eating in my practice. But you know, when it comes to like balancing your hormones, feeling like the best version of yourself in her year, for example, we have a whole month on health because it's so important. Like without your health, you can't have the life of your dreams, because you don't have you. You aren't going to wake up out of bed. You know, like you're going to be miserable. You're going to feel disgusting. You're going to have bloating. Like the flow and effect of not being healthy is massive, and it does affect your mindset. It does affect your energy. And so anyway, then that's 2017, towards the end of 2017 is when I transitioned into doing more of the work around feminine energy, periods, and like life coaching. I was wrapping up my coaching, my life coaching master certification. And then 2018, that's when I really went full force into my business. But even when I went full force into my business between like middle 2017 to middle of 2018, and I was like doing everything possible, I wasn't making enough money to do my business full time. I was still being a recipe developer on the side, and I really wasn't making enough money to the point where my dad said to me, you know, Monica, it's okay if you have to pick up a side job. And I was like, absolutely not. Then I have a plan B. And if you have a plan B, you don't make the plan A work. So I didn't pick up a side job. I made it fucking work. And then one thing led to another, because I just kept showing up, and I had that relentless pursuit of, I am making this fucking work. Yeah, I burnt myself out, but honestly, sometimes you have to go balls to the wall to just show yourself, like, I am doing whatever it takes to make this work. And then next minute, my business started taking off. I had all these clients. I then got full, and I was just taking on way too many clients and waking up at ungodly hours and going to bed at ungodly hours to like fit everybody in and on all the different time zones, because Australia is like in the middle of nowhere. And so then towards the end of 2018, beginning 2019, no, beginning of 2019, that's when I made my first group program, which is now called Queen Alchemy. Back then it was called Feminine as Fuck Mastermind. And then I went from like 20 or 30, I never remember the number, 20 or $30,000 in like making that in 2018 to $600,000 the next year. That's not to be like, oh my God, I 50x'd or whatever it was. I think it's like 30x'd, whatever it was, my income. That was my like payoff, if you will. Like that was my reward for all of the years that I had put in of making no money, where I was trying to get my food blog off the ground. I was doing this recipe development. I was trying to get brand partnerships, and I get paid like $200 to make a peanut butter recipe, like with peanut butter, right? And I was just like, oh my God, what am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? But I kept showing up, and I kept showing up, and I kept showing up. And one thing led to another, and I figured out the actual thing that I am put here on this earth to do. And then we're obviously here, and this is my business. And I share that with you because this was not an overnight success. My business I did not get here overnight. I didn't even get to the point of being able to be full-time in my business, like within a year. I truly, I say to people, like, okay, yeah, I quote unquote started my business in 2018, but like that's when I started making money. I started my business in 2015. It was just a food blog. And then it fully transitioned into what I have now. Like, and when I say transition, it literally changed from one name to another, to another, to another. I kept using I would change the domains. Like I kept using the same website though. And then we got here. So I share that with you for any of you that are feeling lost, that are feeling like, oh my God, is my work paying off? You won't know, but keep showing up, because the people that are relentless with the life they want for themselves, they are going to get the life they want for themselves. So I didn't get to go fully into my spiel of like this giant list of all the things that I have been through, but they are like, and so I think it's really helpful if you do listen to the 7 Pillars to Becoming Her in 2025 Masterclass, just so that you can also be like, okay, if Monica's gone through all of this and this has all now been used as her superpower, then all that I have gone through, I can use as my superpower, because so much of it is just changing perspective and not hanging on to the past, not hanging on to victimhood. So I want to finish up with this, ladies, and let's just take a breath. I'm like a bit congested now from my crying. Let's take a breath so that you can really soak in this last little nugget that I'm going to give you guys. Okay. I'm going to say it in first person, but I encourage you to like listen to it as though it's in your first person. It's like you're saying it to yourself. Okay. I made a choice, and I continue to make this choice every single day to live the life that I want. It is simply a choice to not play the victim, to show up even on the hardest of days, to continue to invest in myself and work on myself, to do the things that scare me the most and that don't make sense. And I do this because a not average life requires you to do things that the average person wouldn't do. So do not expect results from the work that you didn't do. Being her in 2025, which I know you want to be, requires you to do what you didn't do this year in 2024. It is so much easier to be distracted, to play the victim, and to believe other people are just lucky. You're just lucky. They're just lucky. It's so much easier to believe that because you don't have to put any work in. You just get to then give yourself an excuse. Like we talked about at the beginning of the episode, you get to give yourself an excuse as to why you don't have it. Oh, well, I don't have that because they're lucky. They're privileged. They're that. They haven't gone through anything. If you keep telling yourself that, if you want to keep telling yourself that, fine. But don't expect to be happy when you're laying on your deathbed, because you have not shown up for yourself one bit if that is your mindset and that's how you live your life. So if you want to keep doing that, be my guest. Just don't expect a life that is unordinary. Expect a life that is very, very ordinary. So ladies, with that, her year officially open. Early bird closes on December 13th. My New Year's Eve bundle is also open, so you can join that if you would like to. If you join her year before December 13th, you'll actually get that included. The New Year's Eve bundle is live this year in front of our 10-foot Christmas tree. Vibes! So make sure you come. Make sure you come live if you can as well. We've tried to arrange it so that Australia can come, the US can come, and Europe can come. So I hope all of you are able to make it on December 13th. It's a Friday night too, so hopefully that makes it a lot easier for everybody as well. Also, Friday the 13th is the day of like the feminine. It's not like an evil day. People think it's an evil day. No, it's not. So it's like full feminine power on that day, plus Christmas energy, plus the end of the year energy. It's just going to be absolute fire. So her year mastermind style experience, 12 months, 2 in-person events, a masterclass every single month. We have a Telegram group. Like it is already popping up and we haven't even started the program. So the energy, the women in it that are joining, oh my God, like the women in it that are joining they're going to make this experience. If you want to be around women that just say yes to a big life, that want to have the amazing conversations, that will be your cheerleaders, that think expansively, like this is 100% the group to be a part of. Okay, I will see you guys in the next episode. Thank you for listening. And please, 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 a reminder to Share the podcast on your Instagram stories, tag Monica Yates Health. You can tag Feminine as Fuck as well. Leave a written review if you haven't already. The tagging and sharing on your Instagram stories, as well as leaving a review, means the world to me. And I appreciate all of you that do that. All right. We'll see you guys next week.